Hello everyone, welcome back for our final video of our series. We're going to look at the 5th Sunday of Easter. This is our 9th video together.
Hard to believe it's already here.
Yeah, we are winding down.
Yeah, it's gone fast.
So hopefully this has been a good study for all of you, and that this final video together will be a good final study as a small group, and then the next time we'll see everybody will be at the final large group gathering. So
Which is May 7th, is that right it is?
6th, I think.
May 6th. It's
That Thursday.
Thursday after our last week from 6 to 8 p.m. We'll send out more details through email and stuff, but yeah.
Yep, so keep an eye out for that. And to go over our readings today, Brian, will you give us a little overview of our 5th Sunday of Easter?
So we've got some powerful readings here that we're going to dive into. The first one is from the Gospel of, it's Acts. It's not a Gospel. It's from Acts in chapter 6, and there's some really interesting things that are happening in that one that we're going to dive into. It's some early church things that are starting to happen and see, which is really cool. And then the second reading is from the letter from St. Peter, the first letter from St. Peter, which is also really cool. That's where they talk about Christ being the stone that was rejected and became the cornerstone. And then finally with the gospel, we're in the Gospel of John, which is actually the farewell discourse, which happens at the Last Supper. So we're going back in time a little bit, but it's really powerful to hear some of the things that he was telling the disciples that was going to come to be. So those are some of the readings that we have. And so to begin with, I guess one of the things that I think, so if you have time, please take time to do the readings. We decided this year not to do that because it makes the videos much longer. But please take some time to read the readings for this Sunday Mass. And in the very start of the first reading in Acts, it mentions two different groups. It says, as the number of disciples continued to grow, so where the church is growing, and so more people are being baptized, and it says the Hellenists complained against the Hebrews. Well, so obviously we're talking about Christians here, but it's more of where they came from. So the Hellenists were Greek-speaking individuals that came from all over different settlements across the Roman Empire to Jerusalem. And then there was the Hebrews, which is primarily came from Palestine, but they're the Jews, right? And so they're different speaking. The Hebrews would have spoken Aramaic. Hellenists were Greek-speaking, and so there was just natural tension between the two groups based from where they came. And so one of the things that the reading points out is that the Hellenists complained against the Hebrews because of what was happening to the widows. And so the widows of ancient time is a very different experience than in today's world. Well, the widows back in the time were very vulnerable because they really depended upon their livelihood for the help of others. And so it was a very vulnerable place to be as a widow. And so the Hellenists were kind of raising concern about some of these widows are being left out and aren't being served. And so that's really kind of the start of the reading. And so I don't know if you wanted to say anything more. Or...
No, I think that's a good background to have. I just like how our three readings, which we'll dive into a little bit deeper here, are really pointing to the service that we're all called to as the baptized, especially that we now see in the church between the deacons, which we see in this first reading, and then our greater call to the common priesthood or the universal priesthood in the second reading. And then we see in the gospel sort of the institution of the priesthood would have either just happened or is about to happen. So we sort of see how at first it was just this Jewish priesthood that was specifically for the tribe of Levi. Now it's being opened up to the community of Christians and any of us or all of us really have that call to the priesthood now.
Yeah.
Which is a good transition from that early Judaism to the new Christian church.
Yeah, absolutely. And later on in that first reading, so we're seeing this problem develop in the early church where, the Hellenists were talking about the Hebrews and concerns with their widows and things like that. And so there's this problem, like we got to make sure that we serve this population, but then the tension between the two was going on, and so the church had to do something. And so that's when they actually chose 7 men. They chose, and they named them later on in the reading. It was Stephen, it was Philip, it was Prochorus, it was Nicanor, Timon, Parmenas, Nicholas of Antioch. And so the names are very interesting because most of the names there are Greek type names. And so it's kind of telling that it was the Hellenists that needed to be served, and so they chose 7 men among the Hellenist Christians, because we're talking about Christians when we say the Hellenists and everything, but they're Christians of Hellenistic descent. So they chose 7 men from among them to serve their people. And so this is in many ways, there's a lot of signs that point to these being the first 7 deacons that the church ever ordains. Because later it also says that they took them to the apostles for approval, and so they prayed, and then they laid the hands over them, and so they ordained them to the diaconate. It doesn't actually use the word, it doesn't say that they're deacons, but some of the language, some of the Greek words that they do use share a commonality with the word for deacon as well. So there's a lot of connections there. And so this is kind of the early church being formed. There were these things that would happen. There were these needs that came up, and the church had to figure out how to do that. And that's when they ordained the deacons to take care of this issue in particular.
Yeah, early troubleshooting amongst their community, for sure. Mm-hmm.
And I love what you were talking about the royal priesthood. I feel like that's something that you might have heard somebody say, but haven't really thought more about it. But all of us, through our baptism, were baptized into a common priesthood. So we have, Father Tim's up there, or maybe it's Father McCarthy or Father Seiberg. They're priests, they're ministerial priests. They've been ordained. They've had the laying on the hands of the bishop, and have been put into service. But at the same time, we all have a common priesthood that we all participate in. And so when we are at Mass, as well as lay people out in the congregation, all of us bring our own sacrifice to the Mass. The priest is up at the altar. He makes Jesus' sacrifice on the cross present to us through the Eucharist and through the body and blood, soul and divinity of Jesus. Well, we also have our own sacrifices that we are bringing. It's our common priesthood that we all participate in. And I always thought that was really kind of cool.
Yeah, I think it's something that's overlooked a lot, that we're called to these 3 things of priest, prophet, and king, and that it's a true role that we have to fill here.
The triple munera. I had a professor in college, the priest, prophet, and king. That's what they call that, is the triple munera. Mm-hmm. And he would always go crazy about it. That's funny.
But yeah, it's very much something that if we all fulfilled those roles every day, just think about how greater and stronger our church would be here on earth. I think that's something that we can easily forget, especially if we weren't raised knowing that these are part of our identity as Christians.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, something else that kind of stood out to me too was in the second reading, when it talks about, when it starts off talking about the living stone, saying, come to him, come to Jesus, he's a living stone. That always just stood out to me, of like, stone is it's a rock, right? But he's referred to it as the living stone. And so he's the cornerstone. Right? He's what we built the whole church on, and in many ways the whole foundation of creation itself. Mm-hmm. But I always thought that was interesting, the living stone, and in particular when it talks about us being stones as well, being living stones, because ultimately we get our life through Christ himself. It's through our baptism and through the sacraments that we are gaining life. We are being given life. But it's only in our association with Christ as the cornerstone. But I always thought that was interesting, because it's almost like, we're dead to sin. We're like dead as a stone to sin, but when we are, through our baptism, we are actually gaining life. And we are living stones. But, I love that whole architectural idea of everything, of how, Christ is the cornerstone. There's a hierarchy there. Everything is built upon that, in the same way as, he called the apostles. They were the first bishops, and the bishops are the ones that ordains the first deacons in the first reading. So there's this hierarchy that's being built all upon him as the cornerstone.
Yeah. Yeah, a rock is sort of useless without a purpose, right? And our purpose is to continue building upon what Jesus has already laid before us. No, I like that. Always makes me think about our parking lot structure that we have, where they found those rocks in our construction. And now, if you haven't seen it, there's a little plaque over there that talks about the stone that the builders rejected has become
that's a good point. If you haven't seen that, you should check it out. It's in our parking lot. It's a corner. It just looks like a stack of big
rocks.
limestone slabs. But when they were building the parish hall, they uncovered that, and so they were some of the old cornerstones, I guess.
Some
kind of foundational stone that was used for an older building, and so we had it out there, which is really cool.
All right. Well, anything else for second reading? Should we move on to the gospel?
Yeah, I think let's forge on ahead here.
All right. Anything that stuck out to you particularly in the gospel, Brian?
I think the first one, the very second line of it, it says, Jesus said to his disciples, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You have faith in God, have faith also in me." I love that. Like, do not let your hearts be troubled.
Stop it.
There are so many things in life that can be stressful and hard to deal with, and all these things. And, he just says, do not let your hearts be troubled. He's like, he's saying, I got you. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Stay close to me, and you've got nothing to worry about.
Right. Just have faith, essentially, is the remedy to that.
I love that imagery of just like, you don't have to stress about everything. It doesn't mean that we can be idle and,
just expect
sloth,
everything to come to you.
Yeah, it doesn't mean, exactly. We're not entitled. That sense of entitlement. Like, I don't have to work out this problem. It's just going to work out. There is some entitlement there to be aware of. But at the same time, if you are doing everything that you can, there's no reason to worry.
Yeah. Your dwelling place has been secured. God's going to make sure you fill it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, especially in everyday life, where there's so many things that just sort of hit at you throughout the day, and how many of these things are actually things that you need to sit and suffer through. And you can get to it. You'll get to it. You'll figure it out. God will provide an answer for you.
Amen. That's such a great consolation to me, in particular.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of things that can get stressful in times, and it's like, no, I'm just gonna. There's been many times in my life where, I have been faced with a lot, or a challenge in particular, and I'm just kind of like, well, I've done what I can, and I'm just gonna let the Lord handle it.
Right.
I'm not gonna worry about it. And then somehow it works out in a way that was like, wow, like that was amazing. That was not me. That was not the reason why that worked out. It was not me, it was God.
Whenever I have like an overwhelming thing that I'm just tired of stressing out about, I like to think about, I guess when I pray, I like to like visualize me putting the stuff I can no longer handle into like a box, and like putting it at a foot of a cross for like as an offering, I guess, to Jesus. Like, this is yours to figure out now because there's nothing that I can do about it. And it's very peace-inducing to have to just visually thinking, it's no longer my thing. I gave it up to you, and God can figure it out from there.
It's a very therapeutic coping skill.
Yeah.
Really.
Box up my troubles. They are no longer mine.
Yeah. Because they're his troubles too.
Yeah, exactly. He's yoked to that as well. All right. Well, anything else? This is sort of a long-winded discourse.
Yeah. It's the last one, so we had to go out.
Yeah, with a bang. All right.
I think
Hopefully
that's pretty good.
Provided a lot of food for thought, and you guys can dissect that even further. But as our final video, hopefully you guys enjoyed this time together. We look forward to seeing you at our final gathering, which I will not be at. I will be in the throes of preparing for a wedding, so keep me in your prayers, and Steve as well, as we prepare for that sacrament together. And you guys will be in ours.
It's that weekend, correct?
Yes, May 9th.
So the following Saturday after we gather at our large gathering, she will be getting married.
Yep.
Super exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, we'll send more details out about the large gathering, and we'll see you guys next week.
All right. See you later.
All right. God bless.